Alright, Inmendum video on the economics. Yeah, I haven't done that in a while. Just want to play with it because the modern mystic is sort of inviting the conversation, but he won't have the conversation, so it won't matter much. But it's an interesting subject, and so it's worth talking about. And he's on the focus is debt, and what the hell does it do, and what are the implications of it? What is it? Is it a parasite, or is it a good thing? Is it food or is it poison? And I guess the answer is it depends. Yeah, on whether you're on the payback end or you're on the, it's like what side of the credit card is more fun, right? I mean, the putting stuff on the card or having to pay it back, right? So it just depends on what side of that equation you're stuck on. And if you're stuck on both sides of it, then obviously it's just as painful as it is fun. And it's likewise the same for the economy. The economy has fun when you're putting stuff on the plastic. It doesn't have much fun when you're taking stuff off of it. You're not creating any jobs, when you're paying your debt back. It's just a simple truth. That's the way it works. So it's the kind of thing that just can't do the unsustainable curve thing. It sort of has to do the oscillating thing. And the question is how big should the oscillations be? And that's really the definition of the whole problem. The crash of '39 was just a consequence of the fact that they didn't regulate it, and therefore it got way too much debt, and paying it back was impossible. And therefore everything had to come screaming to a halt until you equalize the value of everything in the economy, because the values were all exaggerated by the fact that all this debt money had increased prices and to levels that they couldn't justify, that weren't justified. So anyway, and so then they had to essentially destroy the value of the cash again. It's not it's not as dramatic as the German example, but the same process takes place. The whole economy is stagnated because it can't be fed by any debt wind, and so it only kind of wind that can blow is the cash wind. So you have to move cash around to make anything happen in the economy, and that's a lot harder to do. It's somewhat of a simple answer. Debt is a fake wind. Okay, it'll get you some speed, but you always have to pay it back. So you can pay it back little bits at a time and slow you down, and then you don't notice it, or you can crash into brick walls and have a 39 collapse. So every rational argument would be is that we're just waiting for 39 collapse. It has to happen. It's going to happen. The debt is unpaybackable. It's unsustainable. It can't be paid back. It can't be moderated or neutralized in any way. You need more debt to pay back the debt, kind of thing. The only thing you can pay it back is debt. You can't pay it back with any real assets, because we can't make real assets fast enough to pay it back. How else to even say it? So anyway, so yes, we'll go to a couple of, we'll play the Mystic first, and then we'll go to that.
Very short.
He doesn't say much.
It's all still to do with debt. And debt is a coin.
Okay, debt really isn't a coin. It's one thing. Okay, it doesn't have two sides. It's got one side to it, and one side only, in the sense that every positive thing about it is a negative thing. So if everybody started paying off their credit cards right now, okay, there would be a huge decline in the economy, because everybody would stop buying because they have to pay off the credit card. They're paying the money to the credit card bill, therefore they're not stimulating anything, they're not producing anything, they're not consuming. Well, they're not consuming, and that means they're not producing. Okay, so if you're not buying bananas and instead you're paying off your credit card debt, you're not a consumer anymore, which is you're reducing demand, which is you're reducing supply, and that's a vicious cycle of doom. So there's no side to the coin. It's one thing. It's debt.
Where credit is the other side.
So credit doesn't really mean anything, and the real problem with once you have a crash economy is, so the real problem is if you just have a decline, well then debt can still save you, so you can throw more debt at the problem and boost yourself out of it. But once debt becomes unreliable, intrinsically unreliable. You just can't trust anything that looks like debt because nobody pays debt bills, right? Everybody's bankrupt, and they have no credit. They have no. You can't trust that they can come up with the money, so you have to demand cash, but you just can't trust anybody anymore. That's why 39 took 10 years to dig themselves out of. It took a war to get them out of it. It's because nobody could trust anybody anymore. And I don't even mean trust them like being a good guy. It's just you knew as a practical matter there's no reason for them to get a job. There's no one to hire them. There's no industry to create their job.
Equals debt. So
money creation is equals debt. No, it doesn't. Debt isn't money. It's a commodity like cash, in the sense that it's something that can be used in the economy like cash. It can be used like it, but it isn't the same thing. That's why it has different words on it. The cash has certain kinds of words. The debt has certain other kinds of words. Okay, a bond, some kind of IOU. The IOU, those are different kind of words than what's on the cash. So they shouldn't be confused as being the same thing. Yes, they're both wind. They'll both create demand. They'll both buy a product, but they're not the same thing.
On the headline this morning, Bank of England launches emergency rate cut to tackle the virus. Not that you know.
So the rate cut thing just has to do with attempting to generate, more credit. That means more trustability for people to be more in debt than you would like them to be. So it's like just saying to everybody, well, just trust everybody a little bit more. And that is, essentially sell something to somebody. Well, they say, I'll pay you on Thursday. Well, let them say, I'll pay you the Thursday after next. Okay, so it's just lowering the standard and acquiring debt that's more and more suspect in terms of its capacity to be paid back. So it's creating the most dangerous kind of debt, the kind that can't be paid back.
Obviously, rate cut doesn't tackle a virus, but so the stock market's up in the UK. Bank loosens restrictions on banks to allow them to lend more.
Right. Well, the market will go up and down, as long as the debt is still good. So as long as they preserve the floor, they'll be okay. But as soon as debt can't finance debt, all right, where you can't borrow money to pay back borrowed money kind of thing, because no one's going to trust it, as soon as that trust is gone, then the bottom falls out of this whole thing. Because the liabilities are insane. So once the debtors can't pay their debt, and that's quite obvious, made quite obvious, that's when everything goes into the crapper.
These restrictions to keep banks safe and not do silly things.
Right. No, they're doing plenty of silly things. It's just that they're saying go ahead and be sillier. Okay, so let's not have it any confused. I'm going to show you some charts of just silly, right? Just absolute silly right in front of your face silly. Okay, and these are the people regulating the banks. I'll show you what people who are regulating the banks are doing that's just silly.
Well, that restricts the economy, so best go and loosen that off and lend some more. Measure.
Right, and it has to be paid back with what? You have to make actual value to pay it back. And people don't really make actual value. They're just making enough money to pay their bills, most of them, and there's the hoarders of the wealth. And that's a whole nother subject about how the economy crashes. It doesn't crash because a bunch of little people go to the bank and say, give me my $5. Okay, that's not what crashes it. Okay, it's when the big people do it. Okay, and they're going to do $7 trillion worth of it. Okay, at least $7 trillion.
Could free up an extra £120 billion of credit to the economy.
Right, it just means cash. Okay, that just means you're making something that's like cash. It's a wind. It'll blow on the sail. But the catch is, the opposite wind has to hit the sail someday. Someday you have to blow the other frickin' way. So whatever you gain from it, you're going to lose when you have to pay it back. So it doesn't work. It looks like it works, but it doesn't really work.
So they're hoping for another 190 billion.
Well, except for the part that it looks like it don't. I know why it looks like it works, because the blowing back part, sometimes we spread that over everybody, so nobody knows it happened. That's called inflation. Inflation is pretty much the cost of paying back all the bad debt that is blowing the other way when to pay the bills. That's what inflation is. So that's how it's taken from you. But you can know that as a real backward step, right? As soon as inflation hits, you know you move backwards. You're not being fooled that you're sailing really fast ahead forward, right? Now, if you own some stocks, you might have that delusion. But again, it has to blow back.
Of credit.
See, the stock market goes up. Debt is good for the stock market. Okay, so the stock market just cares about how much wind is there. It doesn't care about what the wind is made out of. So the stock market's easy to fool with fake wind. Wind that has, eventually will have to be paid back. It loves debt. Debt goes straight into the economy as an asset, as real value. Debt is like a fake building. So, the stock market says, oh, look at that cool building. No, it's a completely fake building, but they think it's a real asset. Okay? And so it's when the debt starts falling apart and all those little fake buildings start evaporating. That's when the stock market realizes my assets. I bought 10% of nothing. Absolutely nothing. It doesn't exist. It's a fake building. I own nothing.
Which means 190 million of debt. I've got to stop, or I'll start doing that 25 minutes on and on a thing again, just to say I'm back and up to talking about economics if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, people doing it in comment sections, I think it's pretty lame expectation. So, yes, the comments are pretty much drool, okay? There's nothing to make out of them. So anyway, it's just kind of a silly expectation. So, yeah, let's hop over here to just a couple of charts. Now, I have asserted for years that in that whole bank crisis thing, that the FDIC insured $7 trillion. I actually said the number, $7 trillion, right? That was my guesstimate. And it just happens to be exactly right on. Okay, so I was 100% correct. $7 trillion. It's over, a little bit over $7 trillion. Well, it's almost $8 trillion. So they have $8 trillion that they're insuring. So they're an insurance company, right? And they're insuring like all this coastal property, right? $8 trillion worth. And they have $100 billion in their fund. So they have $100 billion insuring $8 trillion. If I think that's correct. Well, anyway, it's only 1.4%, okay? 1.4% in the fund. So they're covering, they have a liability and they have a cushion of cash that's 1.4% of what they have insured. So and this is your safety. This is your life jacket. This is the boat that's going to come to rescue you when your boat sinks, right? And it only has 1.4% capacity. This fund isn't like just some arbitrary thing. No, this fund is intended to actually be able to do what it claims to be able to do, which is insure these assets. It clearly can't do it, okay? It doesn't have any hope of doing it. So, the first 4 people that claim their FDIC insurance are going to be the only people who get real cash. Everybody else is going to get something from the government saying, I can't pay you right now, or, well, I'll pay you, but I'll wait a few weeks because I'm going to start dumping a ton of cash into the economy and I'm going to inflate the hell out of the value of that dollar. So the dollar I'm going to give you is going to be worth 1.4% of what it was. So, yes, I'm going to inflate the hell out of the cash because I don't have it. It's not in the fund, and I've insured the assets and said I'm going to give you dollar for dollar cash. Well, if I give you dollar for dollar cash, the dollar can't obviously be worth it because there's only $2 trillion in all of the circulation. I have to double the amount of cash in circulation and triple, quadruple Zadzupel the amount of cash in circulation just to pay back what's FDIC insured, let alone all the rest of the economy, let alone the Social Security checks and all the other liabilities. So right there, $7 trillion, no hope of this fund being able to cover it. The insurance company is bankrupt technically. There's no way when a hurricane hits, that fund will be worth anything because it will not give you back dollar for dollar. It'll give you back half your money, 1/4. No, more likely it's going to give you back a penny, 1.4 cents on your dollar. That's what it's going to give you back. It's going to give you cash. It's going to give you a dollar bill that's going to be worth 1.4 frickin' cents. So that's just one of the things they colossally broke with this whole fraud. All right, so let's go to the other diagrams of doom. I gotta go back a ways. Took a little bit of looking to get those totals and such. All right, so this is the FDIC account. So this is the money they've borrowed from banks. They told the banks to go buy bonds, U.S. bonds, treasuries, as they call them. They told the banks to buy them. They didn't give the banks any cash, but they're just telling the banks, just put an IOU in your drawer. Okay, bank president, just put government IOU in your drawer. You know you got it. We'll let you be way overextended in the terms of your cash balances are going to be way off because you didn't get cash. You paid out cash, bank money. You sent it out. All right. But yeah, we're covering it. So don't worry about it. It's a good debt. Okay. And so they just kept it off the books. So this is off the books borrowing. It's not on the books. It's not honest, like you sell a bond and you honestly are in debt. So the government's just playing a game where it's telling the bank, you go into debt because nobody knows the difference. Nobody knows how much debt you have. No one cares. And the only people that are going to put you in jail for it are us. And we're telling you, go ahead, spend the money, buy the bonds. So they bought it with real cash, but no one's accountable for the cash. Right, so that's the trick. So yes, they have to account for it because it is a transaction. The banks are owed this money. So we owe the banks technically $4 trillion, right? 4 point something or other trillion dollars. It just hovers up there. They play around now and then, but it's a monstrous amount of money. Four more trillion. So you got 7 in the FDIC insurance. You got and what is it insuring? It's not insuring real assets. It's insuring junk bonds. Half the money, half that $7 trillion is insured junk. So it really has no hope of being any good. That's money that all goes out. It's not like you're insuring it against some degrade. You're insuring complete junk. Anyway, so there's another $4 trillion that the federal government owes. It's real debt. The banks, when they fail, will say, pay me the money I bought those bonds with. You owe me $4 trillion. It's $4 trillion directly owed to the bank institutions. No doubt about it. It's just solid debt. Just a way of hiding debt. See, because they don't have to pay real interest on it. See, the interest rates got so low that the banks were willing to say, okay, just give us some interest. So the banks are actually getting interest. Why would they be getting interest on this money if it wasn't borrowed money, right? So they're getting paid and they never even had to account for the money. So it's not like they actually had to use some of their real money to buy the assets. They didn't. They can still have their money, their profits, they can still keep in the stock market. They didn't have to use their cash. They used the Fed's cash. So it doesn't add up to anything from their perspective. It's not a deficit to them. And they're getting paid to do the deal, to do this. It's sort of a lie. It's just an overt lie. So anyway, these are the institutions that are telling you when a bank is financially fit. Institutions, the fraud of FDIC insurance, 1.4 cents you'll get back on your dollar, right? It's all you can get back. You can't get back any more than that, right? They have to print the cash. If the government doesn't have the cash, it has to print the cash. You understand that, right? If it's going to make you whole again, it can't give you, well, will you accept a piece of, hope pie? If I give you a whole piece of pie and I write hope on it. Will you take that instead of cash? No, they're not going to be able to make any other deal. They're going to have to give people cash. Cash is expensive. So it just ain't going to happen. They don't have any place to pull it out of. They got no bag full of cash to just throw the cash out. They have to print it. And when they print it, they're going to dilute the cash in the economy, and all of your cash is going to be worth less. Just like if there was twice as many elephants in the world tomorrow, each elephant would be worth less. And the more I make, the less value they have. And the same is true of currency. All right. Something the mystic really doesn't get. So anyway, so that's in the Fed. And then there's the cash in circulation, which is, it has reason to incline. So it's not always bad that you put a little bit more cash in the economy. But understand, it's only $2 trillion. So it's only $2 trillion cash in the entire world. That's how much cash is in vaults and savings accounts in people's pockets. It only adds up to $2 trillion. And I just showed you $11 trillion worth of liabilities. So the amount of cash is small. The amount of liabilities is huge. And that's not even the national debt. You pile on another 25 billion, right? So you're talking trillion. So obviously this cash can't cover all of those assets if they're not real assets. If they're just bullshit, and you're going to have to pay off the bullshit. I didn't say that quite properly, but anyway. So this incline is kind of a good thing because population increases, so you need more circulation to keep the cash lubricated, so it can keep moving. The more transactions, the better is the idea. They call it, they talk about money moving. Transactions are what you want, because transactions are an evidence of demand, and demand creates jobs. Jobs creates salaries. Salaries create demand. Blah 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 blah. That's the thing you're blowing with the wind. And debt will spin that. Debt will spin the economy. But as I stated, debt has this liability that when you have to pay it back, it stifles that motion. It starts to consume it. So you could sort of see that on the other chart. They gave, so anyway, the idea of currency inflating a little bit is a good idea, because then people won't hoard it. So if people hoard cash because they think it's going to be worth more tomorrow, see, if that line was going the other way, then people would hoard cash, because cash tomorrow would be worth more than cash today. So you want it to inflate a little bit, just so people won't hoard it, because it is a real commodity. It's a real valuable thing that allows people to make transactions. It oils, greases the flow of money in the economy. What do I want to hit here? Forward button, I guess. Okay, so we're back to this debt. See, they tried to pay it back. You see, it probably is some other reason. So that was probably some, oh, well, we thought the economy was good enough for, the end of last year, and they thought they could maybe pay off a little of this, but the wind blew. As soon as they puffed the other way, to pay back some debt, the boat almost stopped. And they said, oh, shit, get on the other side, blow it back again. So they just blew it back again because they said, oh, we can't do it. We're not getting away with it. And, probably something like that. But anyway, but yeah, it has moved in, 15 years now or whatever it is. It's dead. 12 years. But it's just a lie. See, the Federal Reserve was a certain... See, that flat line means the Federal Reserve was used for a specific purpose all the way up to Bush 2. And then Bush 2 let him do this wacky new game. So the Fed completely changed in what it does in terms of regulating the cash between banks and being like a PayPal, a free PayPal, where the banks can electronically move their money back and forth. And instead of just doing that simple function, it turned into this monstrous debtor. And it piled up this huge amount of debt to create this huge boom in the stock market. But how are you going to pay it back? Because as soon as you start to pay it back, as soon as you start extracting, you start creating the inflation, and you start creating the death of the economy. Because it's the consumption it's a wind against your wind. It's a wind against your sailing wind. It's the payback. So the real point is that we've enjoyed this huge sail, and I guess you could sort of illustrate it this way. that there's the real wind of an economy, transactions that are cash based. I save the money, I spend the money, and that's a wind that blows, okay? And then there's this, I guess I should do it this way, the arrow this way, so it looks like it's hitting the sail this way, and you have this sail and you want to move the boat this way. And debt will add energy, okay? Debt will put energy in, but the point is the debt thing does this spiral out. You need more and more debt, more and more debt. And as soon as you stop making more debt, you don't have any more new wind. And if you're paying back any of that debt, then you have the opposite effect, and you're blowing against. Okay. So the problem is we've just kept letting this debt spiral grow and grow and grow. Trillions and trillions, 40, 50, 60 trillion dollars worth of fake assets. Okay, the growth in the stock market, all fake claims on cash, right? I mean, it might be worth 100 trillion or something, the whole value right now. I mean, obviously, if it drops 50%, it's still $50 trillion worth of assets. It's more money than anybody can pay out. Most of it is just hype and popularity and bullshit. So people own these stocks and they think they own something real. They own $6 million worth of property and employees, and the stock is valued at $6 billion or something, or $3 billion, And the real company, if you really cut it to pieces, only is worth $7 million. So there's huge inequities between what people think they've bought, the value of it, and what its real value is going to be in a depressed economy. Its real value in a depressed economy is this. Its fake value is this. Now, if we pay people out in cash for this fake value, right? The cash, there's not going to be any cash left for anybody else. Is a simple argument. But anyway, so debt is this fake thing where it gives you this illusion when you're all collecting it one way, it's fun, but when it has to be paid back, it ain't no fun, and you get sent back, and it's a huge kill for the economy because nobody can buy anymore because everybody's paying off debt. So there's no consumption. That means no production. That means no jobs. That means no distribution of the money into the economy. It means the rich get richer, relatively speaking, and the poor get catastrophically poor, and you end up with a depression. And it doesn't look like they're going to be smart enough to save the day by perpetuating the important parts of the economy and telling the rich, to live on carrots for a while. Because that would be the only way to save the day, is to quit pretending the rich really own this much stuff. They really don't. That was all bad debt. They know it. Right now they're buying it, right? They buy a junk bond that's FDIC insured. They know it's a piece of junk, okay? But they don't care because they know the government's on the hook for it, So they know this stock market is full of this crap, So they really aren't entitled to this. They aren't entitled to pull all that out, hoard it as cash, and then crucify us when the economy goes bad. Because they'll pretend to still be really rich. Because they'll have the cash and we won't. We'll just have the debt to pay back. And the federal government will have the debt to pay back. And they won't be able to pay it. So the cash won't be worth anything. And that's the time when you just liquidate everything and you start over. You just give people, try to give people some proportional percentage of what they've earned, in the sense that they had a house that was paid for, they deserve to still own it, but everybody else, you gotta, anyway, it's just too messy to even describe how you clean it up, because somebody's got to pay for it. Somebody's got to pay for this stupidity of letting the boat sail on all this bad debt, because it can't go forward anymore, but you just can't make any more of this stuff realistically. It's all bad. Alright, it's probably enough of a video. Don't need to harp on it. And I probably won't get anything called a rational response, so there's no real point. But again, there's a huge distinction between debt and cash. Cash is good. $2 trillion ain't much. I mean, realistically, think about it. $2 trillion in cash in circulation. The government has not turned on the printing press and printed cash. It hasn't done it. It's a lie when people say it. Cash is good. The problem is they're going to have to print it if those bad debts ever are forced to be paid. If people start saying, give me my money, real money, then we're in big trouble. Because the government won't have the cash. All right. So, till the next time and such. So again, people can just keep saying, oh, well, it always comes back. It always it's a buying opportunity, blah, blah. Yeah, you can keep doing that. I would have expected 10 years ago it would have blown up, because I wouldn't have expected they could do things as silly as this Federal Reserve trick. I mean, who would have thought that somebody would come up with this idiotic idea of, let's just pretend, okay, that we bought stuff when we didn't buy it with money. You know, it's just cash that's not really in circulation. We just bought a debt out of existence and are just hiding it in there. We're just pretending we didn't borrow that money, but we did borrow that money. It's debt money. It's not an asset. They call it an asset, but it's a liability, plainly. Yeah, and who would have thought they could hide money like that? I mean, that's just so obviously shenanigans. Okay, enough. And then, you know, insuring $7 trillion worth of financial assets with a fund that has 100 billion or 100 million, whatever it is. 1.4%. That has 1.4% of it in it. A fund that thin. Yeah, no chance that's going to work. Alright, so that's enough now. Yeah. So, till the next time and such. So forth and whatnot.